live.
Making sure it doesn't seem like it's popping up the right way.
It's popped up.
It did not on YouTube.
I will postpone sending a tweet.
Oh, there it goes. See if it's
YouTube's confirmed.
YouTube is, and making sure it reconnects here. Still says not available.
For which? Because I've been able to activate both broadcasts.
On X on mine.
Oh yeah, it's working.
Is it?
Yep.
No, on here, mine.
It's showing good.
Weird.
The tweet works. Shows live. Shows 3 viewers. Hello.
Hello, 3 viewers.
One of them could be me. It might be.
Yeah, I'm just making. Okay. I don't know why it wasn't working there. Anyways.
Working now.
Perfect timing. Game's over. Look at that.
Yay.
All right. Welcome in, everyone, to this episode of the Batflip Podcast. It is Damien with David this week. No Matt because he's lame and wanted to ditch us for some reason on this Labor Day episode of the Batflip Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about, we had a couple of big head-to-head series this week with the Royals and Guardians in that American League Central race. We had a big series in Arizona between the Dodgers and Diamondbacks for 4 games. And then we want to do a wild card update and then an AL East update and just keep those big races, make sure we're keeping a good eye on what's happening there. So, you know what to watch for. But before we get into all that, David, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing pretty good. Football started.
It did.
I think we're both a little sour after this weekend, right? He's Oregon and LSU. I'm Clemson, and not a single one of those 3 teams had a good first game. So back to the drawing board when it comes to college football. But my baseball team has decided, not the Reds, my baseball team, the Cubs, have decided to play unbelievably good baseball for some reason. Finally, it took till last week August for them to actually show up and play every day. I don't know. I wish it had happened in May. We'll see. We'll talk about it when we get to the NL wildcard stretch here. But in terms of my teams, good in baseball, bad in football, which kind of dictated the weekend. But other than that, nice long weekend. Had a good time. How you doing, Damien?
I'm doing great. I mean, like you mentioned, football's back, so that encompassed the entire day. Thursday night is? We had 21 games, so that was Thursday night into Friday into Saturday into everything. And that's fun to get back. Like you said, didn't have a great 2 games for my team. When you beat Idaho by 10 points,
Yeah,
it's not really a good thing. And then
that's
USC
almost
game,
a loss.
Yeah, that USC LSU game was a nail biter, and that's 3 straight opening weeks for Brian Kelly with nail biters and that. But anyways, we're still talking about football way too much on this, but
it's okay.
I will say, as far as my baseball team's concerned, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, they had a good weekend. But
yep, they did.
I think we start in the American League Central because that was the series that we really had happen. I think it was really started as we recorded last week between the Royals and Guardians. It was a 4-game series in Cleveland. Excuse me. Kansas City ended up taking the first game 4-3. They took the second game 9-4. They took the third game 6-1, which I believe then made it a tie at that time for the American League Central. And then Cleveland ended up taking that last game 7-5, getting the division lead back. And then in the aftermath of that, we've seen those teams. Kansas City went to Houston immediately got swept by Houston. And then Cleveland faced off against Pittsburgh, and they ended up taking 3 of 4 there, which therefore saw the division lead go back right up to 4 games again there. Which now the Royals are technically third in that division, 4.5, because the Twins are technically second with fourth. But the Royals did hit or have an injury, a big time injury during this series that happened, and then they added a couple of players. So, David, recap like the injuries and
Yeah.
who they added and what the series kind of meant for each team.
So, Vinnie Pasquantino fractured his thumb. That'll kick him out probably for the rest of the season. I would doubt he makes it back. And you won't be able to probably do a rehab assignment at the end of the season like this. The minor leagues wrap up here in the middle of September, so Pasquantino will. That's a guy who's got 97 RBI. He's kind of hitting in behind Salvi and Bobby Witt, helping work with them, and that's not good, right? That's the kind of bat you can't afford to lose in a division race, and the impact's already been seen with them losing 3 games to Houston this weekend. They brought on Tommy Pham, waiver claim from the Cardinals. Actually, he got DFA'd by the Cardinals. They waiver claimed him. Nobody picked him up, and then he got DFA'd by the Cardinals and picked him up. So the Cardinals traded away Tommy Edman in what we felt like was probably the biggest heist of the deadline, and have DFA'd the bat that they got because the rest of the team has completely collapsed over there. So picking fun at the Cardinals while I can, but Tommy Pham arrived. He's only played 1 game. He played again today, I think, but that'll be, I think, a good pickup for the Royals down the stretch here. It's just, it feels like they've already given up the advantage that they had gained, right? They also went ahead and claimed Robbie Grossman. I feel like Robbie Grossman's maybe a little past his prime, and that's just a body to throw out in the outfield against lefties, righty bat. Takes a lot of walks, but that's about it. Is Robbie Grossman at this point? And then they also got Yuli Gurriel, former Astro, and I think he was in the Braves minor league system. They've already called him up. He's played already and has 1 RBI and a hit. So, but that's a kind of a far cry from the Pasquatch, who, Pasquantino is only like a 106 WRC plus bat, but the impact of him in the lineup, I think, is greater than that. Like, he's more of a presence in that lineup to deal with, because you have to get around Bobby Witt Jr. first, and the way Witt Jr. has been playing with a 340 batting average and a 392 OBP, like, he's on base all the time. So any damage that Pasquantino can do is big damage when Witt's out there, and without that, it's just Salvi behind. I think Freddie Fermin is kind of coming back to earth a little bit. It's not a good situation for the Royals right now.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned the way that losing Pasquantino and what that's going to do for them. Like you mentioned, it's a guy whose production maybe doesn't always seem like it's the top level production, but it's the name in there. He's still a fearful bat. He still can hit a homer. He can still drive in a ton of guys, especially if you have Witt and that on the base. And then you go from that to Yuli Gurriel, who's not been able to find a major league job, has been in the minor leagues for the Braves for most of this season. That's just obviously a big downgrade there. I mean, they're going to miss Pasquantino and his leadership. It's a big thing too. He's a big clubhouse guy for that team. So it's gonna really hurt there. You mentioned Pham. I think he might be the attitude guy to come back in and help replace Pasquantino at that point. Looking at the Royals, kind of what their roster's shaping up to look like right now. I don't know where it went. Pham is probably going to be platooning with maybe like MJ Melendez in left and right field, like Adam Frazier, Garrett Hampson. I mean, like, you take Pham over all of those guys, plus then you're going to have Grossman, to play against lefties for some of those guys as well. I think it's just, they're 2 solid kind of role players you can bring in, add into a team who just lost a big leader. Therefore, try and make a run at this, because I mean they are in that last wild card spot right now. They still have a 4-game lead in the last wild card spot. So if they can just weather the storm, I mean, maybe you get Pasquantino back for the wild card time, series, and that's going to be a big thing there.
Right.
But immediately going to Houston and getting swept after all that work you did to get right there, that's not a great look. And then Cleveland, I mean, them being resilient, fighting off the Kansas City series and then going into Pittsburgh and taking 3 of 4 from there to immediately help stretch that lead back out. I mean, that's a massive undertaking too that I don't think is being talked about enough.
No, yeah, Cleveland's a really good team, and I want to note that they're playing each other again, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of this week. The lovely schedule makers for Major League Baseball, who just like to do the series back to back, have thrown 7 games together right now for Cleveland and Kansas City. That familiarity, I think, is going to come back and bite Kansas City a little bit. Cleveland does seem like the more complete team right now. Jose Ramirez has had the quietest 30-30 season of all time and might get to 30 to 40-40, which would get overshadowed, right? Because Otani's going for 50-50. So, J-Ram is having yet another great season in a Hall of Fame career, leading the Cleveland team. Josh Naylor's, I think, hit 30 home runs at this point. If he hasn't, he's going to. It's just this Cleveland team's great, right? And they didn't pick up enough starting pitching. We said it's going to bite them in the playoffs, but they're making do in the regular season, just like we said. And now they've weathered a storm of Kansas City coming back and tying them. Feels like Cleveland's got the AL Central on lock. I just don't know that either the Twins or the Royals have the firepower to catch them at this point, especially with Pasquantino going down.
Yeah, I mean, and you talked about that series with Kansas City and Cleveland. I mean, Cleveland took that for the first game today. It's already happened. They took
Cleveland's already won.
So it's going to be something interesting to watch. Going down the stretch here with the Twins, with the Royals. They're them in the fight there with Cleveland, but losing Pasquantino and that's a massive undertaking for sure. But so let's jump over to the other division kind of race that we had a direct series with this week, and that was the Dodgers and Arizona Diamondbacks. In Arizona for 4 games. The lead was, I think, 4 going into the series. 3?
I think it was 3.
Now. I think it was 6 now. Yeah. Okay. So LA won the first one 10-9. Then they won the second one 8-6, and then they got blown up in the third one 14-3. And then they ended up literally as we started the show today, finished off an 11-6 win for the Dodgers. They're taking 3 of 4. Stretching the division lead out to 6. And the big reason why today's game was so important was it was the tiebreaker in the season series between the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks. So the Dodgers took that. So they technically have a 7-game lead over Arizona. San Diego does have the tiebreaker over LA there, but this was a massive series too. It was very offensive. They had a lot of, both bullpens were taxed. It was just, this seemed like a playoff series. The entire atmosphere, the way that it was back and forth. You're going to score 3. Well, I'm going to come score 4. Like, I think that happened. LA for the first time in their ever history hit leadoff homers or went back to lead off a game. And then Arizona came back and immediately scored 4 in the bottom of the first. Like, that's just the type of level that this game was. The series was here. And it was never, it was a never die attitude for both teams. I think Friday's game was like 10-5 in the 9th inning, and it was a 10-9 game. Arizona brought it all the way back to a 10-9 game. It was 6-6 in the second game, all the way until the 9th inning, when the Dodgers took a 2-run lead there, 8-6. Yesterday's game they just got blown up, like I said, but and today's game was pretty close. It was like 3-1, and then it was like 6-3, and then then it kind of got broken open a little bit at the last couple innings, but still a massive series for LA to take 3 of 4 there and take the division lead to 6, and with the tiebreaker 7 games.
Yeah, and it's spearheaded by the guy you'd expect, right? Shohei Ohtani, a bunch of home runs in this series, right? He's just continuing to pour on the homers and the stolen bases, right? 3 stolen bases today. He's up to 46 now and 44 homers, right? Last week we were talking, he was like 41 or something like that last week. Not only is 50-50 looking like more like a possibility, like it looks likely now that he's going to get 50-50. Like they're already running for it. 50 stolen bases is like an inevitability at this point, so Ohtani is leading the way for this Dodgers team, and he's pulling along some of the guys who had been struggling, but I think Mookie Betts is starting to right himself, right? He has a homer this week, 3 stolen bases. Like the Dodgers were running wild against the Diamondbacks, and that's kind of indicative of where those runs are coming from. But I mean, I guess my question would be about the Dodgers is like, maybe it's not a question about whether they're going to make the playoffs at this point, or not that, but like whether they're going to win the division or get that top seed. It's, can this Dodgers team win the World Series now, right? Can Shohei Ohtani finally break through the Angels slumps? Can he show up to the postseason playing like this, and like a weekend like this where this is the big stage for baseball? You know, it's the atmosphere is a playoff atmosphere, and he 3 home runs, 6 stolen bases. Like that's pretty much what you're looking for when you're spending record setting money on a guy. And we talked about this last week with what he's doing, but can this Dodgers team pitch in the playoffs? Right, that's the big question. Ohtani can't. I doubt he can pitch in the playoffs, right? So, that's the big question at this point. And you're definitely looking ahead, right? This Dodgers group is going to have to play a team that won a wild card series here that is super hot. It might be these Diamondbacks too, right? So they've taken care of business now. They need to take care of business in October.
Yeah, I mean it might be the Diamondbacks there, and what you mentioned too is like, can they pitch going? I mean, that was the big problem last year, right? Can they pitch going into the playoffs? Well, if you look directly at what this last week just for the Dodgers has entailed, it has entailed Tyler Glass now being said, I don't know if I'll be ready for for the regular season. Yep. He's hopeful that, that's the word they're throwing around is we are hopeful he comes back before the regular season's over. Clayton Kershaw left his game. I guess he has a bone spur in his left big toe. Don't know how that happens, but apparently he's in a walking boot and he's going to have imaging done on that as well. Yamamoto's missed since June. He just had his first rehab start, looked pretty good. Sounds like he's only going to do one more and then he could be back with the team. Okay, then again, huge. You don't know there. Flaherty's been solid since he's came back. Buehler and Miller finally look like they're finding it. Gavin Stone is that, he's been consistent all year long. But the problem is just like, you just don't know right now. Like, they've all had their blown ups. They're all injury concerns. Like, that's the point. It's with the Dodgers. It's got to be, they're going to hit. I mean, they are going to hit. That's the thing. Yep. Can they pitch? At the end of the day, that's going to be it. And last year, that's what failed them. And it looks like that's going to be the same question mark heading into the playoffs is, will these guys be ready and be the top level pitchers you need?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at these pitching numbers from this series and this week, right? Gavin Stone has 9 ERA, right, in 5 innings. Yeah. That's 5 runs in 5 innings. Justin Robleski is one of the starters the Dodgers are tossing in right now, right? I imagine he drops back to the bullpen with Yamamoto.
He was just he already got sent back down. He was just a spot starter.
Right. He had a 16 ERA in 5 innings, right? So, and then Kershaw obviously got blown up. Bobby Miller gave up some runs in 5 innings. Again, just no depth in these starts either, right? You're not seeing the kind of typical like Dodgers are going deep into games, dominant starting pitching, right? No, it's not that, right? And even last year's Bobby Miller is not here, right? The rookie of the year contender. Like this is a very broken group of starters that needs something. Right, it needs Glass now to be healthy. It needs Yamamoto to be healthy. Flaherty had 6 innings, but he still gave up some runs, and I guess 3 runs in 6 innings. That's a quality start. Like that was the best starting pitching job that was done by the Dodgers this week. Like they need more for sure, and that's concerning heading into the playoffs for a team that has such a good offense. And it's clear they can win games anyway. Right, this weekend was a game against like a series against a playoff team. They won those games anyway, but 10-9, right? Like 11 to 6, right? Like if the Dodgers happen to slump, which they did last postseason, in a 3-game set, there it goes, right? So definitely concern for the Dodgers, but offensively, none. That's a really good team.
Yeah, so it's the same question mark. It's the pitching. That's what it's going to come down to, and you'll hear us talk more about this as it goes on. We don't want to harp on it too much, but we wanted to highlight the 2 big series that had implications that they could have swung the divisions either way, leading into it. But okay, so let's do a kind of an NL wild card update. Let's go ahead and start with that. Out of these, So looking at the NL wild card right now, we have San Diego. They're 3 games up on the wild card spot. You have Arizona. They're 2.5 games up on that wild card spot. And then we have the Atlanta Braves in that last wild card spot right now.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look behind them, the Mets are only 1 game back. They've made a little bit of a charge.
Yep.
They're 7-3 over their last 10. And then don't look now, Chicago fans. David,
Don't look.
away.
I promise.
David,
don't look. Don't
David,
look.
David, look away. The Cubs are 9-1 over their last 10, and they've actually got this wild card deficit down to 3 games themselves. And I think the big thing is it's only 2 teams they have to really jump. When we did this, I think a couple weeks ago, we had them on there as like a team to maybe watch for, but there was 4 or 5 teams they had to jump.
Right.
Well, they've got hot and they're on that 9-1 over their last 10, and this is going to be a really interesting run down here to the end of it. Given that those 3 teams are within 4 games of each other.
Yeah, and I want to note the teams that fell out that we did discuss. The Cardinals, right? They're 500 right now. I mean, but they started DFAing like Tommy Pham. They DFA'd Sean Armstrong, who they traded Dylan Carlson for to the Rays.
Yeah,
and he has now got like a 130 WRC plus. Sean Armstrong is now a Cub, pitching out of the Cubs bullpen. And Sean Armstrong was identified by our very own Greg Zumak as a guy that the Cubs should have tried to trade for last offseason. He had put up Sean Armstrong for us, and we were like, yeah, I mean, that's fine. And they end up with Sean Armstrong for free, right? Huge. Just that's awesome for the Cubs, whose bullpen has kind of been the weak spot on the team. They had dumped Hector Neris this week too. So in my opinion, this Cubs team is actually like the strongest it's been. But I'm also sitting here looking at like, we just talked about it. You had to pass all these teams. They did. They're in position. They still got to pass the Mets, who are not a bad team. Right, Francisco Lindor is another guy. I talked about Jose Ramirez a little bit earlier, having like an underrated season. Francisco Lindor is 5th in WAR right now. He's about to hit 7 wins above replacement. He might go 30-30. Again, I've seen stuff like Buck Showalter saying like Francisco Lindor should be the MVP, and I'm like, okay, hold on, let's calm down. Like, Buck, come on. Ohtani's the MVP in the NL, but Lindor's having a really good season. Let's not just throw him under the bus. And the Mets ahead of the Cubs, right? They're both chasing the Braves, and I kind of want to pick on the Braves a little bit now because the Mets and the Cubs are 2 teams that have been pretty disappointing this season. I would say that's understated, but they've also not given up. And that's kind of that in itself is impressive given kind of the disastrous pieces that have run into, right? The Mets with Senga pitching 1 game, and the Cubs with, the big signings in the offseason, going over the luxury tax and having kind of a much bigger aspirations than wild card 3 hunting, right? Yeah. The Braves had way bigger aspirations than that. We identified this team as a World Series favorite before the season, and they've had really good things break their way, right? Marcell Ozuna's resurgence. Chris Sale is probably the NL Cy Young. And Spencer Schwellenbach has been really, really strong as a breakout prospect that throws 98 and picks up, just good starting pitching for them. Like, they've had breakouts, they've had reclamations hit. The problem is they've needed an entire team's worth of reclamations because the dang entire team is hurt. Like, and obviously Matt's not here to talk about the Braves, and he could detail all their injuries for us. But Acuna out for the season. Riley's out. Albies is out. Like, Spencer Strider is out. Right, like. Yeah. Just the superstar levels, the amount of wins above replacement, and this is kind of the crux of wins above replacement, right? It's the Braves have lost wins because they have lost out on guys like Ronald Acuna Jr., Spencer Strider, and they've had to turn to other players. And the replacement players are not. They've got the Braves in a position to make the playoffs, but that's not going to be enough. And this Braves team is. It's disappointing. If you're a Braves fan, I'm very curious if you want to make the playoffs because you have the lottery, right? The White Sox and the A's cannot get like top 10 picks this year because of the lottery system. So if you miss the playoffs this year, you suddenly have a very good chance to jump into the top 10 or even the top 5 of next year's draft. And obviously missing the playoffs with a team that's decimated like this, you're probably not going to win anything in the playoffs anyway, right? So there's a pretty big reward for whichever of these teams misses out. And I'm wondering if the team that's like the most injured, which is definitely the Braves, do they want to just see it? Okay, well, let's just miss, get into this lottery. Maybe we get lucky. And then all of a sudden we're picking from, I think it's Ethan Holiday next year and some of those other guys. I mean, I'm wondering what Braves fans thinking. You probably, if you're me, I want to see my team in the playoffs, even if it's
Yeah.
a reduced version of it. But I'm
I
sure
mean,
there are some Braves fans who are like, let's see if we can't, wind up in the lottery.
I would assume that they obviously want to get in the playoffs. I mean, you get in the playoffs, it's a crapshoot. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah, Chris Sale and Spencer Schwellenbach, hell.
And Max Fried. I mean, let's not
Yeah,
forget
Max
about Max
Fried.
Fried.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a 1-2-3 that can still compete in the playoffs. They still have a good bullpen. And, I mean, all it takes is some of those guys to find it again. Like, let's say they get into the playoffs, right? There's a chance that if they get into the playoffs and make a run, that Riley is able to come back at some point. Don't know if, like, where that is, but there's a chance.
Mm-hmm.
But say you get into the playoffs and say Matt Olson figures it out and Sean Murphy figures it out and you get Ozzy Albies healthy. It's like, okay, well, you have the top three of the rotation that can compete with pretty much anybody right now. You still have offensive firepower that they can get it done if they figure things out. I mean, you just get in there. You just never know. I mean, look at last year. Who would have ever thought going into the playoffs last year that the Diamondbacks would have made the World Series?
The Rangers too. I mean, the Rangers were in the wild card, weren't they?
The Rangers, yeah, but they were still a good team. I mean, they had the players. Like, you looked at the Diamondbacks and everyone's like, oh yeah, no, like it's
they're getting
Zach
down
Gallen,
by
it's
Philly.
Corbin Carroll. Yeah, it's Zach
Or the
Gallen, it's
Dodgers.
Corbin Carroll, and then it's like, who else? And it's like, well, Brandon Pfaadt had a good playoffs. They had Christian Walker. They had like Ketel Marte,
Moreno.
all of those guys. Yeah, they all had good playoff runs to make it there. Just get into the playoffs and you never know what can happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've seen it time and time again. So I would say they obviously want to get in there with what they got. But
there's definitely precedence to lefty sluggers with like high contact rates, like higher than contact, like a Kyle Schwarber struggling in the regular season, then going in the playoffs and hitting 10 home runs. There's precedent there for a guy like Matt Olson to go nuts and carry the team. Sure. Like I that it isn't impossible for sure. I'm just posing the potential that our Braves fans like don't even get us in the playoffs. We don't even want to see this team. It's disappointing. Or are they let's just go see, right? Like, and that's kind of that would be my stance is let's go see. Yeah. Let's go. What the heck, Chris, what if Chris Sale throws a no-hitter? Like, come on.
Yeah. I think that's the easy thing. Get in. Like everyone just wants your team in at that point. All right. So now let's look at that's all we had for the wild card, right? Making sure.
I guess we didn't really touch on the Cubs week. It was against the Nationals and the Pirates. Yeah. When we talked about the Cubs schedule, I said, they have to take advantage of the week schedule. They had the weakest schedule from when we did that pod at the beginning of August till the end of the season of any of the teams. And that's why I said, they're like 6 or 7 games out, but they can make the run. The run is here. They have made it, but now it gets harder. Like they've got the Yankees, they've got the Dodgers, they've got the Phillies before the end of the season. Yeah. So this is where if the Cubs are a team that gets in, they have to show it this week. And they're getting Jared Jones and Paul Skeens again this week. They have played the Pirates. They're going to play them 11 or 12 times. And Jones or Skeens will have started 8 of those games, which is obscene. And the Cubs have won a bunch of the games that they have started. But it's like they've gotten the Pirates' best shot every single time. Like, they won the games against them this week, but it's very possible that the losing could start today, and we could just not be talking about it. But they score like 100 runs in 10 games or something. Like, they keep putting up like 14 spots on teams. They're really getting into the bullpen and stuff. It's just I don't know. I don't know if they can keep it up. Can Christian Bethancourt keep hitting like Aaron Judge? Like, probably not, right? But all you need him to do is do it for another month.
Right. Yeah, and are they getting Keller as well in that series?
They got Keller last week and they blew him up, so I don't know if that one. Okay. But I don't think so. I think they're missing Keller, but they're getting Jones tonight.
Jones, Skeens. Well, those 3 had been back to back, so that's why I was wondering.
Yeah.
But
Currently,
yeah, I
the
mean,
Cubs have been no hit by Jones, and the
right.
Pirates have one hit off Skeens. So maybe the offense is going to just be calm for tonight.
Um, yeah, but as far as the Cubs are concerned, it's going to be what's the next week and a half look like?
Yeah,
Because it's this Pittsburgh series, but then like you mentioned, it's at home against the Yankees, and then it's traveling to LA to face the Dodgers for those 6 games. Then after that, it's a pretty easy schedule outside of
right.
Philadelphia. But these 6 games are going to matter. I mean, if you go 0-6, there's no shot basically.
You're done. Yeah,
You're done.
you gotta take 2 or 3 games in this set, and if you can compile that around another couple of sweeps, like if you can sweep the Pirates
Yeah,
into that, you're okay with 1 or 2 wins. But
right.
this is the time. You got to look like a playoff team now, or
You have to.
if you go 0-6, you're not a playoff team. Like that's
Mhm.
just bottom line.
Yeah, so that's what we'll be talking about, next week or even the week after, I guess, technically with what the culmination of both series look like and where we're, these weekly kind of updates that we'll do on these races moving forward. That's going to be the big key to watch out
Hmm.
for. So um, if you're just looking for what intense baseball it's going to be the next week or so, I mean, tune into Wrigley this weekend because that's going to look like a playoff series most likely. And then in LA for the start of next week.
Oh, and the Yankee series is Rizzo's return to Wrigley for the first time, which he may or may not be there. I
He's
haven't even.
activated.
I was thinking I want to go,
He's
but I'm
activated, so
all right. Well, I might have to. I might be there. We might be reporting live from Wrigley
yeah.
Field on Friday.
Yeah, I think he got activated the other day, September 1st, so yesterday. I think he got activated.
All right, that's good.
Okay, so now let's jump over. Speaking of the Yankees, this is a very good
Yep.
segue into the American League East now, which is tied. It is
Yep.
the Orioles and the Yankees are tied right now. The schedules, the Yankees, I think we were looking at it before the show, has a little bit tougher of a schedule to finish out the season. But there's a real big key. The second to last series before the season's over, it is Baltimore versus the Yankees in New York for 3 games. That series is probably going to decide what this division, who wins this division, and who gets a wild card spot. Um, both teams. I just watched the Orioles this weekend or this last week. They faced the Dodgers in LA. They gave you pretty much everything you expected, but Corbin Burns has looked really bad lately. I think he got blown up for 6 runs. I want to say.
Yeah, it
Maybe
was one
even
earned. Apparently, I threw it
yeah.
in the I threw it in our Discord, and I was like, I don't know if Corbin Burns is going to be, so is he really something 300 million? And someone was like, there's only one earned.
It
So,
was it
but
was
T
one earned,
Oscar hit
but
it. T Oscar took him real deep.
yeah, and that was one of the unearned ones
Yeah,
technically
technically, because
because
after the air,
it was
everything is
after the
unearned.
air.
Yep.
Um, but he didn't look like himself either. I was talking to our buddy Hank, who's an Orioles fan,
Right.
and the bat flip breaks there. Um, and I told him I was like, Corbin he doesn't look like he has the command right now. Like that's one thing
Hmm.
Corbin's had decent command is most of his career, especially over his cutter, did not have that right now. So
Hmm.
if he lines up for that series, you hope that he can figure that out. But the Orioles have been decimated by injuries too, especially to that pitching staff. Um, they don't have Grayson back. They lost John Means. Bradish is gone.
They don't.
They're starting like
Eflin went down too,
Eflin
didn't he?
came back.
He went
He
down and
just
came
came
back.
back. Yeah, he just came back yesterday,
Yeah.
and he looked pretty good. But they are starting like Cole Irvin and
Hmm.
Albert Suarez, and like that's not going to get you where you need
Trevor
to go.
Rogers.
Well, he's been optioned.
Yeah.
But
No.
he's been bad down there too. But you get the point I'm making. It's like
Yeah.
the
Not
the
enough pitching.
Orioles, the pitching has been the crux of what they're going to need to figure out heading into this
Hmm.
last month, especially into that Yankee series.
Yeah, it is. I'm also noting Jazz Chisholm, I think, is still down, or
No,
is he
he's back.
back? He's
He's back.
back.
He's
All
been
right,
good.
that's good. He's Jazz Chisholm has been, I think, he might even be the key to this whole thing, right? The Yankees get Rizzo back, the Yankees get Jazz Chisholm back in the last couple of weeks. Like, if Jazz continues how he's been with the Yankees, which is a insanely good player, like 190 WRC plus,
Yeah.
on top of the obvious, which is Judge and Soto. Judge has not homered since last Monday, um, so the chase for 64 plus is looking less and less likely. But you never know when Judge goes on a heater, right? So um, the Yankees are still winning games, and that's what's kind of important here is that this team is I think flawed, pretty obviously flawed. And the Orioles, obviously, we just talked about their flaws too, right? The pitching. Both of these teams are flawed, and they're still so good. Like they're hunting the number. They're guaranteed. One of them's guaranteed probably the 1 seed in the AL with all the flaws, and the other team's going to the wild card. So this battle is maybe the most influential battle because maybe one of the two best teams in the American League is going to be playing in the wild card series. And one of these teams has good starters, right? Garrett Cole, Carlos Rodon, like it's Nestor Cortez, like reliable starters that you can at least count on in a big game. And the other team has Zach Eflin and maybe Grayson coming off an injury, and that's second year Grayson. He's still maybe not fully developed into a star pitcher. And then it's got Corbin Burns, who looks questionable right now. I think the Orioles fans especially are going to be really hoping they're not in that wild card series because it's just the shorter series are so much more determined on your pitching and especially your starting pitching, and that's been their big Achilles heel right now, and it's a question mark to whether they'll be able to get healthy in time for that series.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: if Burns and Eflin are good heading into the playoff into a wild card series, like I take the Orioles pretty much over. You're talking about over the Twins or the Royals or something along those lines. It's like I'm most likely taking that. Them, even if it's like against Cleveland, like say it's Cleveland versus Baltimore, if the Yankees end up winning the wild card or the division, and that I still think if Burns and Eflin are on and they're figured it out and they had a good last couple starts before that series. I mean, they're going to be hard to beat. Those are two really good pitchers. I mean, it's a 3-game series at the end of the day. So, but that's the question mark right now. They have to be good, and right now they aren't, and you aren't sure what they're going to look like there. So, if you're the Orioles, you very much need to avoid that wild card series right now to give your guys just that little bit extra time as well.
Yeah, Orioles. I think you take them right, and I think one big thing to watch here is Corbin Burns is going to be the best free agent on the market in terms of pitchers, right? Like he can earn himself money this next 2 months. Like this is where he earns the money. Like right now, you're saying, yeah, I mean he'll get a pretty sizable contract, but if Scott Boras wants some ammunition, like Corbin Burns has to come out here and take the Orioles to the playoffs and then pitch like a superstar in the playoffs, and he can command Garrett Cole money. But if he doesn't do that, then we're looking at the kind of debilitated 30 plus. How much is Corbin Burns relying on command now because he mostly throws cutters? The velocity isn't really there. Like you're wondering about that, and the contract talks taper off. Like these guys are playing for their big contracts. Like Corbin Burns, he's gonna be playing for one. Like I'm thinking about the reliever for the Yankees, Clay Holmes, right? 30 saves, right? But he's been very shaky. I think over his last couple of games, he's playing for a big contract too. Like he's a free agent at the end of the season. If the Yankees are going to be having a guy locking down games in the playoffs, like Clay Holmes has to show out and strike these guys out, and prove that he's like a legitimate superstar closer for teams to pay Josh Hader money for. And if he starts blowing games in the playoffs or blowing games down the stretch here for the Yankees, which he's already been shaky, that's where it'll change the formation of this offseason upcoming, because teams aren't going to want to pay for a guy who starts to collapse in the end of September.
Yeah. No, I mean you're right. We notoriously have always seen postseason, late September and into postseason runs can always make or break potential free agents this season.
Yep.
So it's going to be something to watch for, but we kind of hit on it real quick, but I just want to think, like, as we're the last couple of weeks, I want to keep highlighting it as we go. The both historic runs of what the updated stats are looking like. Like you said, Judge hadn't homered in a week. He's still at 51 homers right now. Projections are saying he's to end at like 60, 59, 60. So he's going to have to go on one of his heaters here if he wants to hit 63 or 64 technically. And then Shohei, he's at 44 homers and he stole 3 bases today. So he's at 46. So he's 44, 46 right now. Seems a lot more likely that could potentially happen. But that's just something, quick little thing that we should continue to update as each week goes by. Um, looking back,
Here's a fun little one. If Tariq Skubal wins all 4 of his remaining starts, he will win 20 games, and that's not really a the pitcher win isn't really something we look at anymore, and I think that's pretty deserved. But I would say, in this day and age, if you can get 20 games where your team won the game and you pitched at least 5 innings of enough good ball to win the game, it's pretty impressive. I would say that's at least something to kind of keep our eye on here. I mean, Tariq Skubal he maybe a trade target, maybe a extension candidate for the Tigers. What they do with him is going to format, it could shape the entirety of Major League Baseball if they send him to one of those superstar teams that always seems to get the good players. So I'd keep my eye on old Tariq Skubal there. That's a fun little race, since we're talking about the statistical races here.
Yeah. One thing that I just realized that we forgot to talk about a little bit earlier, so I do want to mention it because it does have some impact, and that is with the NL wildcard race, the division race in the National League West, with the San Diego Padres.
Oh yeah,
Fernando Tatis Jr. was activated today from the IL. His last game was June 21st. He had like a stress reaction fracture, I think, in his back or something. He didn't go on any rehab games, really. He had some games at the complex league, like the Arizona complex league and stuff, some sim game stuff, but no actual like minor league rehab games. He was activated and thrown right in, and so far he's 0 for 3 with a strikeout. But it's Fernando Tatis Jr. I mean, if he's able to come back and be himself, I mean, that's a big boost. It didn't sound too encouraging in his interview, like or pregame. It sounded like, "Oh, I'm cleared, but like I'm not good." Like he just sounded like he's not 100%, but he was cleared. Like it sounded super weird about it. So, but he is activated, and it just goes kind of what we were talking about with Pasquantino. He's a name in that order that like it's scary. I mean, you don't want to get beat by Fernando Tatis Jr., and it just adds another dynamic into it. Even if he's being bad, there's always the potential that he's going to be good against you.
Right. And so, you look at that Padres lineup, right? He slots in so beautifully. He is the piece that they've been missing for the better part of the season, right? In that right field, alongside Jackson Merrill, the power bat, where this lineup is just sorely lacking in for that power. The thing is that Tatis, since coming back from those shoulder injuries, hasn't really been a power bat. But knowing his history, knowing that he's a guy with that 40 home run power, if you get him the right Tatis, potentially he can go out there and swing it. So, I'm wondering if this is the missing piece for this Padres to finally have a run, because with this emergence of Jackson Merrill, they kind of look like a really complete team now. Yeah. Just depends on whether that starting pitching can get there in the postseason. But yeah, I mean, we're not talking about them chasing down the Dodgers really, but it seems like they've kind of settled into that wild card 1 spot, which is a good spot to be in, and hosting that wild card series. And San Diego can get rowdy, so they've got pretty good starting pitching, right, with Dylan Cease and the guy Musgrove back there. I think Darvish is still not back, and he's probably is he finally back?
He's off the restricted list. I don't think he's actually activated pitch with them, but he's back with the team.
And that's right. He's rehabbing. Tyson Lewis hit a double off of him.
Yeah, so he is on his way back. He should probably be back within a couple weeks.
Yeah, and Yu's 38, man. Like I do hope he has one last big run left in him here, but being on the restricted list all season, that doesn't help anything. And Musgrove's been a bit shaky. He's been better lately in terms of giving up runs, but yeah, Dylan Cease is gonna carry this team. But Jurickson Profar and Ha-Seong Kim are both free agents after the season. I imagine they'll both be leaving this Padres organization just as a group that has just exploded in terms of payroll. A couple of guys that can earn themselves some big money here down the stretch and into the playoffs with some more big games like we've been talking about. And I don't think anybody's been talking about Ha-Seong Kim like it's in terms of like a free agent target at all, but that guy's coming off like a 5-win season. Last year, he was one of the best defenders in baseball. This year hasn't been nearly as good. The BABIP's been a lot suppressed compared to how it was last year, but he's still like a stolen base threat, good defender at second base. He's put together almost a 3-win season despite being like a 230 batting average hitter because of that suppressed BABIP. So he's a valuable player. I just I'm very interested what his contract looks like and whether he can step it up here coming down the stretch and show, hey, I'm a superstar player. I can go out there and earn this contract.
Yeah, it's going to be something to watch for sure. But just wanted to make sure we went back and hit on them adding Tatis back because that's a major move for that. But I think that's pretty much going to wrap it up for what we got. I mean, this is kind of what the next few episodes are going to look like here. I mean, as we're heading down, the thing's going to be highlighting these close races and just getting things in order, ready for the postseason. And if anything special happens, we'll hit on it. But anything else that you want to hit on before we wrap this up, David?
Nope. Hope the PCA breakout is real. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Batflip Podcast. And we'll catch you back here next week. And since David's here and Matt's not, this week we're going to end with a Matt Sucks.